Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. I had it on mute. Um, Hello, everyone. Welcome to the talk on Data Catalog to MLOps, Data Ops for Actionable Analytics. This is as part of the Bright Talk session on Advanced Analytics for Data-Driven Business, track on data management and architecture for advanced analytics. This is Pragyan Nayak here. I function as the Chief Data Scientist with Hitachi Vantara Federal. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of Hitachi Vantara. I have over 20 plus years of experience in software development and data science. And my journey as a data scientist began as I started working on my PhD from George Mason University in computational sciences and informatics. And it involved applying machine learning techniques on various algorithms. One of my favorite ones was the Bayesian networks, and the problem space was in Galaxy's redshift estimation. I do run the Northern Virginia Deep Learning Meetup as well as the Washington, D.C. Pentaho user group. So if you're in the area ever when these meetups are occurring, please feel free to join us. I've had a good fortune of presenting at a couple of conferences, some of the recent ones being the AFCIA West, the FDA Innovation Day, as well as a keynoted for the Enterprise Analytics Online last year. This is organized by Dataversity. I do function as a reviewer for the last couple of years as part of the SkyPy Python conference as well as the Grace Hopper. I do participate in a number of hackathons and volunteer as an election officer, as well as part of the Lead and Leadership program. Please ping me if you want to know more details about that. Okay, let's get on to the talk itself, talking on how data ops is relevant for actionable analytics. But before we delve into that, primarily we do analytics for the main purpose that we want to take certain decisions, and these decisions essentially are based on the why, the purpose of what we are trying to accomplish, um, and it's based on that. Now, these decisions are based on some form of intelligence. That is, we'll get into that. There are various types of intelligence that we need to be able to take effective decisions, but they are primarily the aim is that you want to get at either increased operational efficiency or improved data monetization, and or your goal could be a mix of both. And typically, it is said that in the private sector, data monetization is a primary goal, whereas in the public sector, operational efficiency. However, you could think of them as both going hand in hand to a large extent. Now, these intelligence is tied to the organization's vision and mission. The vision and mission drive the goals and objectives of an organization, and that in turn drives the strategies and the tactics, and that in turn goes down to the action items. And this is where you can see the connection from the vision and mission of an organization to the actionable analytics, and how your strategies and tactics and your strategical and tactical intelligence helps define the action items as well as drive the vision and mission of an organization. Now, this framework is typically goes by the acronym of VMOST. Now, the mission is the organization's core purpose, whereas the vision is an envision future state. The mission will not change, likely won't change, whereas your vision may be updated from time to time as as environment changes, as peoples and processes and tools change, but your mission is likely going to remain the same. Now, based on all the above, your effective action plans and tasks are the ultimate outcome of this. Now, you can see that this is more of aspirational to tangible, as well as another way to look at it is this is more long term, and as you go down the pyramid, it becomes more short term. So, more aspirational to tangible, as well as long term to short term. Now, another way of looking at this is these all drive each other. Now, your vision and mission drives your strategic, where your strategic is saying that where are we going? And that in turn drives your tactical and operational intelligence, where you're trying to determine what to do to get there based on what is your there. You define the there based on the vision and mission of your organization, as well as how to get there. So it's the combination of tools and people which defines your tactical and operational intelligence. And these all together define the actions or the tasks, and in turn, that's how your actionable analytics relevance and importance kicks in. Now, let's look a little bit into the tactical and strategical goals difference. As I was mentioning, like there is a long-term versus short-term, as well as more aspirational to tangible. But at this point, by the time you're looking at your tactics and strategies, they have they're the difference is more in terms of one is more near real time and the other one is more of a big picture. And so in the tactical goals, you try to get a pulse on the present, so you know what is happening at the moment and keep track of that. Whereas in strategic goals, you're looking at your emerging trends and patterns, and that helps you push the boundaries of what you're trying to do and measure success of achieving the goals that have been set. Whereas in tactical goals, you are looking at effective current operations and corrective measures that need to be taken to stay in course. So you're essentially trying to stay in course when you're looking at your tactical goals, whereas strategic goals is looking at more as the how do we do better at what we are doing, or how do we what could potentially go wrong. So in a way to look at it, your tactical goals are more specialist, that requires highest granularity of the data, whereas strategic goals are more generalist, that requires summary. And for people from the business analytics field, you can immediately do that mapping and you understand that tactical goals are essentially you are having a close-up view. It could be in the form of notifications and alerts, for example. Whereas as strategic goals, you're looking at the widescreen view and you're more interested in dashboards. It gives you the big picture. Now we have, as part of Hitachi Vantara Federal, we have a couple of our data products which can help accomplish both of these goals. It involves Pentaho and a couple of other platforms. And as we go on in this presentation, I'll be tying together the needs versus the products that we have, which can help meet those particular needs, and how data ops comes into the picture in meeting these objectives. Now, your decisions are based on these goals, but there are a couple of other um, reasons why you would go into data ops or look at actionable analytics. Let's cover a couple of them before we get into the tools and look at a few examples. Now, regulatory compliance is one of the prime ones, which primarily could deal with data protection and digital privacy. There are a couple of laws which are in place, which require a given corporate or even a given federal government agency to adhere to those laws, or make sure that they are remaining adherent to those laws rather. So some of these must be pretty well known, like the GDPR and the CCPA, that is applicable all across. So a lot of people are familiar with that. That deals with how the corporates deal with data of their consumers and how they should take care that there is no data breach. And if there is a data breach, what are the corrective steps to be taken? As well as like in anytime, particularly here in the specifically here in the United States, when we go to our doctor's appointment, we have to sign a HIPAA form, which tells that our it's kind of an agreement that the data is going to be secure between the medical organization and yourself, and it will not be released to others. And if it is released, what are the conditions under which it will be released, and stuff of that nature. So there are certain data protection and digital privacy laws like this, as well as within the cybersecurity of government networks and systems. There's a continuous diagnostic and mitigation which needs to take place so that cybersecurity events are breaches are handled in an appropriate manner. Apart from this, these are familiar for everybody, but apart from these, the federal government, the United States federal government, has a couple of acts and legislations ongoing at the moment, which is kind of relevant to this topic of why we need actionable analytics and how data is becoming more of an asset, as being treated more of an asset by the governments as well. And using the data for the purposes of being a more efficient government overall. The first one that there are three laws or acts that I want to highlight here. The first one being the Federal Data Strategy that was signed in 2020, as early part of this year. It recognizes data as a strategic asset, and it reinforces the recommendations of the Evidence Act. We'll come to the Evidence Act. That's the second one I'll be covering of the three acts. And what it does is it enables different agencies within the federal government to work together and to treat their own respective data as an asset and have a path in the direction of being better enabled in using data for achieving their missions and visions, and goals that they are set, and how to effectively use data for that purpose. I'll definitely recommend, particularly if you're planning to work with the federal government, you're interested in using the data that is being shared by the federal government in the various data portals, including the open data portal data.gov. Take a look at this, because this kind of gives a very good overview on what is the long-term strategy and how data is being treated as a strategic asset. So one of the key things that this document highlights is that there should be, every agency needs to have these specially designated roles, which not just enable data as an asset for themselves, but also to grow their resources as data experts, and how to improve the effectiveness of using data in their day-to-day operations. So the Evidence Act, which is kind of the inspiration for the federal data strategy, was enacted in January 2019, and that tells that any policy being made, base it on data, base it on certain data elements that you have access to. It could be within the agency or intra-agency, inter-agency. Use the data to formulate the policies, to measure the effectiveness of policies. So that is in turn based on the Open Data Act, and Open actually is one of the acronyms that the acronym tells you what it means, though it is an acronym where Open stands for open, public, electronic, and necessary. So the data is made available in a portal, and it is made available in a format so that electronic processing can happen on it, and it enables more effective governance and more data scientists to be able to help in processing that data, in using that data for the various other purposes which may not be immediately apparent for an agency itself. So I'll definitely encourage you to take a look at these websites such as the data.gov to get access to these data, which is being openly made available for the citizen data scientists to take a look at them, as well as there are these other three sites which are very they have a lot of resources and help you work with this data which is made available. And the third of the three laws that or acts that I wanted to highlight, well, the last one is the GREAT Act, which was only late part of last year signed, and it deals with the grants processes. So GREAT stands for Grant Reporting Efficiency and Agreements Transparency. And it deals with making the data related to the various federal grants which are being given out to different entities, and using that data to in turn formulate better policies. Now, yes, there's a lot of things which can be done with data, but we all know that it is extremely difficult to find your data of interest, trying to formulate your questions, and all that. Now, in order to make that process a bit smoother and enable that process in a more effective way, there is the process of the data ops methodology, which has been formulated. Now, to put it very simply and in the most in a one sentence format, I would say data ops stands for getting the right data in the hands of the right people at the right time. And so, as you can see right there, you can see that it is saying that it's trying to orchestrate people, processes, and technology together to enable you to be a better user of data, find the right data, use the data more effectively, as well as make it a repeatable process, so that it's not just you take a data set, do your analytics, and you move on, and that's it, that's done. It's no longer of any use for anybody else, and even when you come back, maybe you don't see any use for it. So that's not the idea. The idea is that you should be able to your data as well as your insights, they should drive the process. They should drive the engine of the organization, so that your going back to our earlier most framework, your vision and missions are continuously being met and being addressed, as well as your tactical and strategical intelligence, and your data is more of an asset. It's a strategic asset for you. So definitely it's trying to connect the data consumers as citizen data scientists. That is, they are part of the process. It's not something where they are out of the process and somebody else is helping them. This methodology tries to connect the dots, connect the different roles which are part of a data organization. It could be your data engineer, data analyst, your data scientists, as well as your business users. They should all work together in a cohesive manner to meet the vision and missions of an organization. And this is in the form of an end-to-end data analytics workflow, which in turn enables your data lineage, your data provenance, and data governance. So if I'm looking at a data, I want to be sure that the data is coming from an trusted source. That's data provenance. Data lineage is where I know that my data started at such and such place, but the data that I'm working with, is that the same data, or has it undergone any type of transformation or changes before I got, and I'm using it as part of my data analytics. So having an insight into that transformation and how the data is being modified from the source till the different points of usage is the data lineage. And overall framework, which is the umbrella framework, is the data governance. And as I had already mentioned, it tries to orchestrate the people, processes, and technology together so that you have an automate. You are able to automate your repeatable data operations, and also there is continuous improvement of the data analytics and the data usage that you are doing. And since you have insight into your data and your data is more easily accessible, and the data is right, it is more trusted, that enables and accelerates your downstream, more advanced analytics operations and needs, which will likely be using artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, this part of the diagram, as you can see here, which looks at customers and how the customers and the technology, there's a feedback loop over here. That is the continuous improvement we're talking about. And what I would like to highlight here is that this architecture diagram is from the Lumada framework, which is which is from Hitachi Vantara Federal, Hitachi Vantara. And what it tries to look at provides is data ops at 3 different levels: data ops for analytics, governance, and ops agility. Your needs may be in one or more of these categories, and accordingly can help meet that need. Now, let's just quickly look at the very first one, the data ops for analytics. Now, in that case, as your data consumer, the citizen data scientist, that is your business user, what they are trying to do with your data, they should be able to work independently on it. They should be able to look at different facets of the data, play around with it, do multiple what if scenarios without requiring a IT person behind them all the time helping them with it. The system should be so self-describable, if I may say so, or it makes the data accessible in a format which is more relatable for them in the terminologies that they are familiar to, so that they are independent enough and they can do the multiple what if analysis, play around with the data, and look at the different patterns and trends and do their investigation with the data much more independently than possible without a self-service framework available for them. Now, embedded analytics takes it a little bit further, where it says that it should be part of the business process. Your analytics is part of the business process so that it is kind of transparent. There's no separation between your data generation and your data analytics part of the framework in your organization. It's part of the business process, and it becomes transparent to the citizen data scientist or the business user who's looking and trying to navigate through the different data elements that you have. Of course, data ops can be is also usable for governance and ops agility, as you can see here. Now, the outcome from data ops is that either, as I mentioned earlier, that you are always trying to get either operational efficiency or data monetization. So these kind of give you examples of how operations efficiency and data monetization can be met. The definition from Gartner for data ops, particularly like the fact that they mentioned the word data flows. And that is important to remember, because essentially when you're doing data ops, you are looking at how the data is flowing through your system, and how you are how it is how it is being modified, as well as how it is being usable, etc. So having an insight into the data flows within your entire environment is a part of the data ops. Now, yes, we can do data ops to enable all this, but let's start from the beginning, that we want to address a particular business need. So we need the access to the data. Now, your data is available in your data lake, for example, or a couple of data lakes if you're that unlucky to have that type of a complicated framework. Of course, I'm kidding there, that you may have multiple data lakes, but then that definitely increases the complexity of access to those data elements, and being able to use them more effectively. That requires more effort. Now, with that, I will definitely say that bad data is worse than no data, because if you have bad data, you are, first of all, the outcomes or the results that you get from your data analytics effort is going to be not that useful, because you're going to get anyway incorrect results. It's typically a garbage in, garbage out scenario which happens in that case. But if you have bad data also, or and bad data can be defined in multiple ways. We'll get into that in one of the following slides. But a solution for that you have a lot of data, you want to find your appropriate data, the first step would be to get a data catalog as part of your data ops framework. Now, as a data catalog, we have the Lumada data catalog. As I was showing the Lumada framework, part of the Lumada framework includes the Lumada data catalog. And what it does is it enables you to look at your different data sources, get the data, and being able to navigate through the data sources characteristics to identify which data sets are of relevance for you, even before you start looking at the data sets in more detail and using it for your data analytics solutions. Your data analytics solutions could be in either of these spaces, and your data sources could be an IT source or an operational technology sources. So it could be like your traditional data sources, such as a database. It could be an Oracle database. It could be a MySQL database, or it could be something like looking at some semi-structured data, such as your logs and emails, or even social media. Or it could be even unstructured data, such as images, videos, and text files, stuff of that nature. Whereas your OT sources are typically your LiDAR cameras, your video images, and sensors, which are another source of data. So combining data from a variety of data sources, looking at them, or looking at their characteristics and determining the data set of relevance for a particular problem that I'm looking at, that's the purpose of a data catalog. You may think of a data catalog similar to how you are looking at a book and you are looking at the catalog. Of course, uh, a catalog has references to multiple different type of products, and you're looking and trying to identify what is my current need, and I'll accordingly pick one or more of those products. So the Lumada data catalog serves that purpose of providing a catalog of all these various data sources that you have access to, and looking at the metadata, looking at the characteristics of your data before determining what makes most relevance for the problem that I'm looking at. Now, why we need a data catalog is because definitely enterprises struggle to get value from the data that they have access. And the prime reasons being that finding the right data is hard. So they may be spread across multiple sources, they may be across different technologies, and as I was saying, they could be across your multiple data lakes that you have. So getting the right data from one data lake is difficult enough, but if you're looking at multiple data lakes, the problem becomes even more harder. And then you're looking at big data where there's petabytes and terabytes of data. So it's no longer it just keeps on increasing exponentially, the complexity associated with finding the right data. And then you want to find the right data while also making sure that the data is protected enough. That is, the people who only should have access to the data are taking a look at that data. So that is hard enough. Now, what is sensitive for you is very mission and vision specific or very organization specific. Something that is sensitive for organization A may not be sensitive for organization B. And so that increases the complexity with defining data elements that should be protected in a given setup, because unlike certain elements like let's say the social security number, which is kind of universally that everybody needs to protect that if you are storing it in your database. But there are certain elements which is very specific to an organization, and those need to be defined and protected. Additionally, preventing data clutter is hard. I may have the same information across hundreds of data sets. So finding the right data set and also finding the right elements within a given data set or a data asset, that's the right terminology to use, because your data asset is a source of data that you're looking at. So these three problems just make the whole process of finding the right data complex and difficult and hard to tackle. And if you look at the Forrester stats, that analysts typically spend 62% of their time looking for data, whereas you would think that the analyst should be spending more time solving the actual business problems that should be handling rather than looking for data. So data catalogs are in that process. And another factor which further complicates the finding the right data is the operational gap which exists between the business users and the data stewards versus the technical metadata which is available in your databases or your big data or the cloud-based data assets. As you can see, there are different terminologies which are used. The business terms could be customer and invoice, whereas in your backend table, there's a field name, and then the field length, and all those other technical metadata which is associated with them. So there is definitely an operational gap, and which is more manual in term. So this brings definitely the need for a data catalog, and not just a data catalog, but also an AI-driven enterprise data catalog, where it is able to handle the data at petabyte scale and with high accuracy, as well as data must be automatically tagged with those business terms, so that you're not going and having to tag each and every element that you have in your various data assets manually. There is some form of automated process, some form of intelligent automated process which is doing it. And these would drive the different needs that you have for your data catalog. Now, the Lumada data catalog, it automates the data governance, as I'd already mentioned. Like, it looks at the various different types of data sources at petabyte scale, and it is unifying your data discovery across all these data sources and use cases. It's AI driven, and there is a crowdsourced curation element to it, where the different uh, people who have been working with the data have a chance to collaborate and share information about the data, which helps the downstream or the next person who comes in and is looking at the data to learn from what the previous person has experienced when working with a particular data set and improve on it, or even use it to their purposes instead of having to learn it by themselves. Now, there are multiple use cases, as I mentioned, like the self-service analytics for sure, then sensitive data securing and migration and rationalization of the data. Now, the AI-driven data tagging that I had quickly mentioned in one of the earlier slides, let me just spend a minute on that. How the AI-driven discovery and tagging is useful is that as as you start working with your data catalog and you have done certain amount of tagging on it, it picks up from those tag information, it develops certain number of features. That is, there are certain number of features which are tracked for a given attribute, and those help define the tag in future elements which are seen by the data catalog. So it learns from what is existing in the system, and anytime it sees a new data source, it is able to use that information to suggest tags for the columns. And it's about 100 plus features which are being used. It's not just restricted to the column name, which is usually not a good reason, because I may name my column something, but it actually refers to something else. So when somebody has gone and tagged in a particular way, that's the right information to use instead of the column name itself. Because again, we all know like how the database column names are can be misleading. They can I may, as a developer, I may think it should be called this, but the next person may think no, this should have been something else. But the tags itself, they are more meaningful, and they are um, uh, so based on the different features, the 100 plus features which are maintained for a given attribute, that knowledge is used in suggesting tags in the new elements which are seen. And there is a, as we're saying, there's a crowdsourcing element in this data catalog, which helps keep the knowledge growing and improving this tagging logic, which helps you work with petabyte and terabyte scale data more efficiently than possible without a data catalog in place. Now you have the right data, let's say you have the right data at this point, and then you want to be able to do certain analytics with it. At this point, the tool that we have in place is Pentaho, and it is a self-service analytics engine. It helps you do feature engineering, data manipulation, data transformation, and enable your various data analytics applications that you may have in mind. This could be in terms of a time series, it could be a streaming data application, geospatial analytics, or social media analytics, or even like some form of predictive analytics in the various problem spaces that you're working on. There are a couple of other Hitachi data analytics products that I'll just quickly mention here. I'm not covering them as part of this talk. Please reach out to our marketing and sales team, available at more information is available at hitachivandrefederal.com, and learn more about these. But quickly, the HCP is an object store platform for its for large data stores and for your data retention and data management policies. And there is Hitachi Content Intelligence, which is primarily meant for unstructured data and dealing with the metadata management of the same. And then the Hitachi Cloud Accelerator Platform, HCAP, which deals with the cloud migration and associated services associated with it. So in terms of self-service analytics, I have the data, then I want to look at it in terms of the different visualizations and being able to take decisions based on that. So these drive the tactical and strategic intelligence and provide the same, so that the decision makers and the stakeholders can review them and get a good overview of the current happenings as well as what has happened over a duration of time to take effective decisions. So the Pentaho platform consists of two main things. One is the Pentaho Data Integrator, which helps you do the data ingestion, feature engineering, data mashup, and various data manipulation and data transformation, so that you have the data ready to be able to do those type of tactical and strategic intelligence. It can connect to a variety of data sources. As you can see, there is the traditional data sources again, as well as the big data sources that one can connect to and get the data and be able to do on-demand integration and blending of the data, so that you have the data prepared for your self-service analytics and your predictive analytics modeling going forward. So your data catalog lets you identify all the right data, helps you look through the various data lakes and the various data sources that you have to identify the right one. And then the Pentaho platform lets you take those data sources, combine them in any form that you want, either between themselves or even any other third party, any other data set that may be of interest for you. For example, I may want to incorporate weather data into the data sets that I have already in my data lake. In that case, Pentaho can be used for that purpose, to connect to a source which provides weather data, combine it with the data that I have from my data lake or my various other data sources, and then you providing it in a form so that the citizen data scientist or the business user can look at those data, the formalized data at this point, to do their self-service analytics and take actions on them and do essentially the actionable analytics that is the end goal of this whole end-to-end data analytics. So I'll be looking at 4 examples in the next few slides. The first one is the US Coast Guard data set, just to give you a variety of different use cases that Pentaho has been used for as part of the various demos, proof of concepts that using data. And most of these data are open source, so anybody can get access to the data. And if you want more insight into how these various things were done and get an idea as to the various steps involved, please reach out to me or our marketing and sales team. We'll be more than glad to walk you through the same and talk to you about your specific problems and make that connection there. So the first example is from the US Coast Guard, which is looking at the Marine Information for Safety and Law Enforcement. It's called the MISLE database. It looks at the various vessel and waterfront facility accidents and marine pollution incidents that have happened. And it looks at those incidents by various factors or criteria, such as what is the vessel or facility type, what were the injuries or fatalities that happened, and what type of pollutant was involved in that incident. So these are the various entities. And once we got the data, it's made available as a Excel spreadsheet. We took those data set and we cleaned it up so that it is in a more uniform format, and any type of other types of certain columns were missing, and certain elements, certain columns had some other type of information. So we had to do some form of cleanup. We used the Pentaho data integrator for that purpose. But once that data was formalized, we were able to use the Pentaho business analytics, which helps you do your self-service analytics and play around and do the what-if scenarios that I was talking about. We took a look at it in a map. So as you can see, instead of looking at the data and trying to figure out the patterns and trends, so of course, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and so is the case when you use visualizations. And this makes it, this shows you that how this is much more easier to digest as a decision maker compared to looking at a spreadsheet of the numbers. And some other views into the same data set was looking at the different facilities and which of these facilities were active, what type of incidents happened, and then further breaking down the same incidents by state level and looking at what were the different, which states had the largest number of United States states, which had the largest number of incidents, and what were the different categories for it. Of course, there are a lot more other what-if scenarios which were addressed with this data set. If you're interested, please let me know. Please, more than glad to go through the more detailed demo. Just going on with the other 3 examples that I have, just trying to give a variety of the different self-service analytics that can be done. The second one is looking at storage analytics. That is, we have HCP Anywhere, which is a file sync and share solution. And this type of dashboarding gives the HCP Anywhere administrators an insight into who are the users who are using largest amount of space, storage space, and how close are they going to using up their allocated quota, and what is the overall usage, and various other information of that nature. So if the data is API accessible and it has a data connector, Pentaho can connect to it and get the necessary information and provide you this type of dashboarding. In this case, there is a REST API available that gives you insights into the underlying usage of the storage, and that particular information is pulled up by Pentaho and used to formulate dashboards of this nature. The third of the 4 examples that I want to cover is dealing with the US economic census. This data is made available in the open data platform that I was talking about earlier on as part of the federal data strategies. It's the data.gov. So the US economic census is made available for multiple years. This particular one is looking at the 2012, and it gives you insights into what were the different how the different states have different business establishments, what are the different categories, and how the distribution works. So it's looking at that. And the 4th example is looking at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They have their data sets on the consumer complaints related to financial issues. They release that data set on a regular basis, on a daily basis actually. if I'm not mistaken, but I know they do release it every it's a frequent push of updated data. So this particular use case was looking at those consumer complaints data set that is made available in both CSV and JSON format. These are the different data formats it's available. And then since there is the consumer complaints, which is an unstructured data, we were able to take that data and push it to Elasticsearch Index, and as well as put it into an S3 bucket for cloud-based analytics, as well as into a PostgreSQL. So there are various purposes and needs addressed here. So it was not just always that your data source can be a variety, but also the data output or your consumer, and based on the needs, you could have different targets into which you're trying to push your transform data, so that your various different questions that you have on this data sets, it's being tackled and answered. Like in this case, your Elasticsearch will help you look at the text of the consumer complaint and get more insights onto it, whereas the other ones gives you a different perspective on the data itself. For example, from the Elasticsearch, we were able to do a quick Kibana dashboarding. This is, of course, the most simplest one, where you're looking at what is the frequency of consumer complaints, and you see a peak happening there. So we did certain more analysis on that, and we figured it was related to a data breach which happened at one of the financial organizations. Of course, again, this has lot more use cases, visualizations associated with it. So if you want more details on it, please reach out to me. I'll be more than glad to go through it in more detail. And similarly, we use the Pentaho Business Analytics to look at the same data set, but from a different perspective, because we were looking at the characteristics based on a given zip code. Like this one particularly is looking at one particular zip code. What were the different categories of consumer complaints happening, and what were the different subcategories of those consumer complaints, and how do the different states compare to each other? So we restricted it to these 3 states, and we looked at them, as well as distribution by the different states. So these examples were just to show you the different ways in which self-service analytics can be formulated for a variety of different data sets and problems that you are trying to tackle, or you have to address as part of your actionable analytics for your organization. So these examples were primarily in the descriptive and diagnostic analytics space, as to looking at what is happening and understanding the why behind what happened. But if you're more interested in doing more type of predictive analytics, that is based on the data that we have seen, can we predict what will happen? And based on or can I even do furthermore in terms of prescriptive analytics, which looks at what are my options in order to make something happen? How can I tune certain things and see what will be the outcome? And based on that, I will take a particular decision at this point. So there's this key difference here between predictive and prescriptive analytics. Now, predictive analytics, or typically also we call that machine learning. There are 3 main categories that happens there. We'll not go into details here, but just for completeness and introduction's sake, I have included that here. There is supervised learning, where it is a more of a labeled data exploration. You know what you are trying to tackle, and you want to better understand that particular characteristics of your data. That's where you would use supervised learning. And classification and regression are the approaches for that. Of course, that again goes into each of these, like classification itself can be a day-long session for, or as well as regression. And unsupervised learning is where you don't have a label. You're trying to understand the characteristics of the data. You're trying to do certain type of clustering or anomaly detection. That is, what are the different data elements which are different from the normal behavior, or even looking at latent variable analysis. Reinforcement learning is when you're trying to better understand an environment and how the have certain reward penalty framework, and determine how the different agents which are part of your environment, how they would behave, and how the environment changes, and the associated understanding of the same. A typical machine learning solution involves this, where you're looking at a problem statement, you define your why, and then you identify your data set. Again, this is all tying back to our earlier discussion on the data ops framework of having a data catalog to identify your data. find the right data, then you're doing your cleaning and joining your data sets, where could you potentially use Pentaho for that purpose, and then selecting the algorithms that you can use to answer the problem that you have defined. You have your data set, now you are trying to identify the algorithm that will help you solve the problems that you have in mind. So identifying that algorithm, training and validating that model, as well as deploying that model and continuously tracking it and reviewing it to make sure it is still performant, all that defines the field of MLOps. And as you can see, ops, anytime you see the ops, it means that there is an iterative and continuous nature to it. So how do you continuously work with your machine learning solution so that you are continuously improving it, as well as you're working with newer data, as well as keeping it performant? There are certain AutoML libraries, automated machine learning is what it stands for, which will help you automate this process of feature engineering and the model selection, the machine learning algorithm that you should be using for a specific problem. As more data is available, likely maybe you need to change even the algorithm that you're using. So doing that type of analysis is enabled by the AutoML libraries for that purposes. And metadata management, if you're dealing with unstructured data primarily, that becomes even more relevant. And how does Pentaho come into that picture is that Pentaho has the certain capabilities which enables that whole MLOps process. And just to quickly highlight them, the two things which enable MLOps are the WEKA, or the plug-in machine intelligence, PMI stands for. It enables this particular loop that you're seeing here of the model tracking its performance, as well as improving it over time and understanding when it needs to be modified, etc. And of course, Pentaho also has the R and Python script executors. So if you already have certain scripts and processes in place, you can automate that using Pentaho by referencing the scripts that you have in place instead of having to start from scratch. So using the existing R and Python scripts that you have and you're trying to do using them, you're doing machine learning, you can leverage those and start the automated using Pentaho. This one example or one instance where this has been effectively used is by the marine division of Caterpillar, where they have a asset intelligence platform, and the two main reasons they use it for is optimized hull cleaning, so that the ship is working at maximum efficiency. It determines the time when a hull has a large number of weeds entrapped in it, and it needs to be cleaned so that the ship continues optimally performing, as well as efficient generators so that it enables effective power usage. So with that, you can see that how you can use data ops right from data identification to your MLOps, but also your actionable analytics will start at the data center level. So we have Hitachi Ops Center for that purpose, and I'll just quickly highlight that. In a data center, there's also a need to do end-to-end data center analytics, where you're trying to improve your budget planning and return on investment, as well as you're improving the uptime and keeping the applications running at top speed. So what are the actionable analytics applications at the data center level from a data ops perspective, or predictive analytics, where you're trying to plan and forecast future resource requirements and the interdependencies. So you are staying ahead of the curve instead of hitting a roadblock, hitting a congestion point, and then determining, hey, I need to get more resources added at this point. So based on your past usage, determine the future usage, as well as using machine learning and other analytics capabilities for more efficient data center operations. Now, all these are, again, customer-driven outcomes. So actionable analytics to help better business decisions, streamline data ops, and to systemize the compliance. So with that, I'll just end this with saying that let us enable your data journey. We have these various tools which let you